Zhao Mingdan and her husband Wu Xuanhuan run a breakfast shop. They need to get up early and go to bed late every day, so she prepares the things she needs to prepare in the morning, washes up simply and goes to bed. Zhao Mingdan was sleeping in a daze, and she felt her body sink and was pressed down by someone. It was Wu Xuanhuan who came back. Wu Xuanhuan fumbled to undress her in the dark, and she muttered, "I'm so sleepy," and let him do it. Wu Xuanhuan worked hard on him like crazy, and no one knew who had the problem between the two of them. The two have been married for many years, but Zhao Mingdan has not conceived a child. They have gone to the hospital for examination, but they couldn't find the reason. Wu Xuanhuan was fooling around outside, and usually didn't care about the store. Zhao Mingdan did all the big and small things, and Wu Xuanhuan was responsible for collecting money. Since WeChat and Alipay were introduced for payment, he set the payment code to his own and didn't even go to the store. Zhao Mingdan also came during Wu Xuanhuan's tormenting, and felt her moaning in cooperation. She hadn't been as harmonious as she was now for many years, and Wu Xuanhuan hadn't touched her for a long time. But today Wu Xuanhuan seemed to be working extra hard, and he seemed to want to vent his anger. Zhao Mingdan thought, he must have lost money outside again. Wu Xuanhuan likes to play mahjong. Sometimes he is so excited that he can play until dawn, and sometimes he will come back early when he loses money. Zhao Mingdan usually keeps the door open for him to prevent him from going home at any time. The house they live in is a private house with a yard. That kind of place is very large and convenient for doing anything. The bed creaked, and Zhao Mingdan's lower abdomen was swollen. He wanted to go to the toilet, but Wu Xuanhuan hadn't finished yet, so he wanted to hold it in. But Wu Xuanhuan was like crazy, rushing around and taking a long time to finish, and he couldn't hold it in any longer. So he twisted Wu Xuanhuan's arm and told him that he wanted to go to the toilet. But Wu Xuanhuan seemed to have heard nothing and continued to work hard. Zhao Mingdan was a little angry. How could this man be so selfish? He would not cooperate with her just because she thought so. She stretched out her hand to press the switch on the bedside, but Wu Xuanhuan held his hand tightly before he could reach out. Zhao Mingdan was shocked. Why was this hand so rough? No, the man on her body was definitely not her husband Wu Xuanhuan. Although Li Xuanhuan was brave, he had not been there for so long, and the size was not right. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became. He bit the man's shoulder hard. Ouch! The man screamed in pain. Zhao Mingdan took advantage of the other party's daze and kicked him away, and turned on the light quickly. The man was blinded by the sudden light, and covered his eyes with the back of his hand. Zhao Mingdan looked at the strange man in front of him. He seemed to be in his 30s, with a strong tendon and looked strong. "Who are you?" Zhao Mingdan asked in panic, his voice trembling. The man saw that he was exposed, but he did not flee. He sat up slowly from the bed, lit a cigarette for himself, and explained the reason to Zhao Mingdan. The man said his name was Wang Qiong, he was 31 years old and was a taxi driver. He had a wife named Chen Lan, who was a housewife and liked to play mahjong. Chen Lan was addicted to mahjong and felt uncomfortable if she didn't play for a day, so she basically spent her time in the mahjong hall when Wang Qiong was not at home. "What does that have to do with me?" Zhao Mingdan asked in confusion. "Don't worry, I'll tell you later." Wang Qiong smoked another cigarette slowly, and the room was suddenly filled with smoke. Zhao Mingdan waved the air in disgust, but he didn't dare to show it too obviously, for fear of angering this man. "One day I left something at home, and went home to get it. As a result, he was so flustered when he saw me coming back. I guessed that he was hiding something from me, so I secretly installed surveillance at home. As a result, I saw on the video the next day that he was in bed with a man." Zhao Mingdan shivered undetectably. "I was so angry that I rushed home. He didn't expect me to come back suddenly. While I was about to hit the man with something, he covered the man and ran away. I asked him who the man was, but he didn't tell me. He knelt down and promised to break up with the man and never offend him again. Zhao Mingdan felt a little sympathetic to the man, but as a man, how could I swallow this breath? After I asked around and tracked him, I found out who the man outside was. Wang Qiong said this viciously. Who is it? Zhao Mingdan had a bad guess in his heart. Sure enough, the next second, Wang Qiong said the name, Wu Xuanhuan. Zhao Mingdan froze. Although he had guessed it, he couldn't help but shrink when it came from a stranger. Wang Qiong continued, I couldn't sleep a day since I knew about my wife and your husband. I saw the scene of their affair when I opened my eyes and closed them. I couldn't swallow this breath. Why can only he sleep, while my wife is still happy? As he said that, his eyes were fixed on Zhao Mingdan's chest again. Zhao Mingdan was so scared that he quickly pulled the quilt to cover his body. Brother Wang, I beg you, it's not my fault, please let me go. No, you are his wife, he slept with my wife, I must sleep back. Zhao Mingdan wanted to cry but had no tears. While he was stunned, Wang Qiong pounced on him again. It was unknown how long it had been, but Wang Qiong got up from the bed with satisfaction. Zhao Mingdan looked at the man in front of him and just asked him to leave his home quickly. He had heard that some people would kill people to silence them for fear of being exposed. He was also scared to death, especially when he was alone at home. Even if he shouted his throat out, no one outside might hear him. Zhao Mingdan stabilized Wang Qiong's gaze while searching for tools for self-defense. Who knew that Wang Qiong had no intention of doing so? He pulled back Zhao Mingdan's quilt and took dozens of nude photos of his body. I don't want to be hard on you either. Now we are clear, but if you want to tell anyone about what happened today, you know the consequences. Wang Qiong raised the cell phone in his hand. Zhao Mingdan was still in shock after Wang Qiong left. He thought about everything that had just happened and felt desperate. He hated Wu Xuanhuan for causing trouble outside, and was worried that Wang Qiong would come to his house again in the future. Zhao Mingdan thought about it and decided not to call the police. If all the neighbors knew that he was forced to do it, how could he hold his head up in front of customers, and the town was so small. Good news doesn't go out, but bad news spreads 1,000 miles. Wang Qiong left the house, and Zhao Mingdan was afraid that he would come back, so he quickly locked the door with the bolts. Just as he was locking it, he heard shouting and cursing outside, Damn bitch, why are you locking the door? Zhao Mingdan panicked, his throat tightened, and he asked through the door who it was. The big iron door was kicked hard, making a loud noise in the dark night. You are deaf, you can't even hear your man's voice. Hearing that it was Wu Xuanhuan's voice, Zhao Mingdan hurried into the house and found the key. Wu Xuanhuan came in, cursing, Why lock the door, aren't you afraid of thieves? Zhao Mingdan felt guilty, and didn't dare to look into Wu Xuanhuan's eyes, for fear that he would see something. Where does the smell of cigarettes come from in this room? Wu Xuanhuan frowned. Zhao Mingdan hurriedly explained that his younger brother came over to smoke at night, saying that his father's 60th birthday would be in a week. Wu Xuanhuan snorted coldly and didn't comment. Zhao Mingdan knew that he must have lost money again tonight. What Zhao Mingdan didn't expect was that Wu Xuanhuan always fell asleep when he came back, but this time he asked for sex. Looking at his outstretched hand, Zhao Mingdan subconsciously refused. Wang Qiong's body fluids were still in his body, and he hadn't had time to clean them. If he agreed, Wu Xuanhuan would definitely find out. So Zhao Mingdan pretended to be embarrassed and said, Let's do it another day, I'm having my period today. I said why I'm so unlucky today, stay away from me quickly. Wu Xuanhuan grabbed the pillow and went to another room. Zhao Mingdan finally breathed a sigh of relief. What Zhao Mingdan didn't expect was that Wang Qiong came again a week later. Since Wang Qiong came, he almost locked the door every night. After being scolded by Wu Xuanhuan several times, he simply stopped locking it. He was afraid that someone would come in again. He even raised a dog. But he didn't expect Wang Qiong to come when he didn't lock the door. He walked into the room as familiarly as before. After entering the room, he took off his clothes and pounced on Zhao Mingdan. Zhao Mingdan was awakened. He realized that it was Wang Qiong. He begged bitterly, "Brother Wang, I beg you, let me go." But Wang Qiong didn't care, and kept stripping him of his clothes. "I wanted to forget it. Your husband is too bad. He slept with my wife so many times. I must get her back," he said and pulled off Zhao Mingdan's shorts. Zhao Mingdan struggled desperately, but he was no match for the strong Wang Qiong. He was defeated in a short while. Seeing Zhao Mingdan surrender, Wang Qiong was satisfied. "Your husband doesn't touch you anyway, why don't we have fun together?" "How do you know if he does?" Wang Qiong said proudly, "You think I came here rashly? I learned about your whereabouts before I came here, including the fact that you left the door open every night. You keep a dog to prevent me, right?" Zhao Mingdan thought, no wonder the dog didn't bark. It turned out that it was knocked unconscious by the meat bun thrown by Wang Qiong. Zhao Mingdan had to discuss with Wang Qiong, "Brother Wang, do you think this is okay? This is the last time. I will pretend that the previous things never happened. Let's put an end to it. We will go our separate ways." "No." Wang Qiong refused categorically. "What do you want?" "I will compensate you 50,000 yuan, just ask you not to disturb my life anymore." Zhao Mingdan opened the chips, but Wang Qiong remained silent. Afraid that Wu Xuanhuan would come back and run into Zhao Mingdan, she had to agree to be Wang Qiong's lover for a month. Wang Qiong gave up, and Wang Qiong has not appeared for several days. Zhao Mingdan thought it was fine, and that the matter was over. But he couldn't help comparing Wang Qiong with Wu Xuanhuan. Although Wang Qiong behaved rudely, he was considerate, cared more about his family than Wu Xuanhuan, and most importantly, he could bring him happiness in bed. Ever since becoming Wang Qiong's underground lover, Zhao Mingdan had been dissatisfied with Wu Xuanhuan, especially because he only knew how to gamble and didn't come home every day, which made him even more disappointed. Zhao Mingdan tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. He hoped that Wang Qiong would appear, but also hoped that he would never appear. The door rang, and it was Wu Xuanhuan who came back. Zhao Mingdan saw that it was Wu Xuanhuan, and he turned his head away quickly. Although Wu Xuanhuan usually didn't care about his family, he still had some basic eyes. He could see the change in Zhao Mingdan's attitude recently, and he became cold to him. He was always very concerned about him, but now he didn't want to ask one more question. He tentatively touched Zhao Mingdan's body, and Zhao Mingdan jumped up, as if he was electrocuted. "What are you doing?" Zhao Mingdan said unhappily. Wu Xuanhuan was a little unhappy. "You are my wife. What do you think I should do?" "No, I don't want tonight," Zhao Mingdan said, leaving his back to him. "You have to do it today whether you want or not." Wu Xuanhuan moved Zhao Mingdan's body over without thinking twice. Zhao Mingdan resisted with her hands. Suddenly, she felt nauseous. Wu Xuanhuan couldn't dodge, and was vomited all over. Seeing that Zhao Mingdan was vomiting violently, Wu Xuanhuan didn't force him. At dawn, Wu Xuanhuan took Zhao Mingdan to the hospital for a physical examination. Unexpectedly, as soon as the test results came out, the two were dumbfounded. Zhao Mingdan was pregnant. Wu Xuanhuan grinned at first, but the next second his smile disappeared. "Whose child is it?" Wu Xuanhuan knew very well that he and Zhao Mingdan had not given birth to children for so many years. This child must not be his. "Whose child is it?" Wu Xuanhuan roared at Zhao Mingdan regardless of the surging crowd on the street. Zhao Mingdan obviously didn't expect that he would get pregnant after just a few times. He couldn't tell whether he was happy or sad. Wang Qiong fulfilled his dream of becoming a mother, but this child obviously came at the wrong time, so he let Wu Xuanhuan beat and scold him, and he just gritted his teeth and said nothing. Passers-by on the roadside couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing Wu Xuanhuan, a grown man, beating a woman, especially when the other party was pregnant, did you know? He cheated on me, why can't I beat him? The people who were trying to stop the fight suddenly became a little embarrassed. Zhao Mingdan got up from the ground. He looked at Wu Xuanhuan and said, I cheated on you. Have you been in charge of this family all these years? I get up early and work late every day to earn some money, and you took it all to gamble. Have you considered my feelings? After returning home, Wu Xuanhuan didn't go out to gamble for the first time. He stared at Zhao Mingdan's face and said, as long as you tell me who that man is, I can forgive you for the past. Zhao Mingdan said nothing. You don't want to drink the toast, so you have to drink the penalty wine, right? I remember your brother is still in high school. If you don't want his reputation to be affected, I advise you to come back obediently. Wu Xuanhuan used his trump card. Zhao Mingdan's face relaxed a little. He only has one brother in his mother's family. How precious is he? If his affairs were to be spread back, his brother's life would be ruined. Looking at his uncertain face, Wu Xuanhuan knew that his threat had worked, so he took some drastic measures. I was also wrong this time. I shouldn't have gone out to play mahjong until late at night and left you alone at home. Tell me who he is, and I promise I won't blame you anymore. It must be that man who seduced you. Under Wu Xuanhuan's soft and hard questioning, Zhao Mingdan finally revealed the truth. He told Wu Xuanhuan, his grandson, everything that had happened in the past few days. Wu Xuanhuan gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and veins on his forehead bulged. Come here, I tell you that you are like this. Wu Xuanhuan called Zhao Mingdan over and said these words again. Is this okay? Zhao Mingdan was a little embarrassed. We did this time, and the previous things were written off. Wu Xuanhuan gave him a reassurance. Wang Qiong was driving when he received a message from Zhao Mingdan, asking him to meet tonight. He glanced at his phone without making any comment. After get off work, he handed in the car and headed straight for the place according to the route he remembered. He had thought a lot in the past 2 days. Chen Lan was an honest housewife at home, so he had no reason to harass Zhao Mingdan again. But Zhao Mingdan said she wanted to see him, and he was still moved. Zhao Mingdan still left the door open for him. When he climbed onto the bed quietly, he found that Zhao Mingdan was not wearing any clothes. He immediately felt his blood boiling. He quickly stripped off his clothes and rushed towards Zhao Mingdan. She kissed him randomly, but Zhao Mingdan was shaking like a sieve and screamed in fear, no. Wang Qiong was stunned. At this time, the lights came on, and Wang Qiong couldn't open his eyes. After his eyes adjusted a little, he found a person standing in front of him. Wu Xuanhuan held up his phone and recorded a video of his naked appearance. What the hell do you want to do? Wang Qiong was furious, but he knew he had been tricked by the couple. He didn't do anything. You came to my house to rape my wife. I have a video as evidence. Whether it's handed over to the police or your unit, you will be ruined in a minute. Wu Xuanhuan said slowly, what do you want? Wang Qiong's attitude softened a little. This matter is easy to handle. 100,000 yuan is a private settlement of 100,000 yuan. Wang Qiong was completely stunned. He hated himself at this time. Why couldn't he control his lower body and caused such a disaster? I don't have 100,000 yuan. You can pay as much as you have, and write me an IOU for the rest. After bargaining, Wu Xuanhuan reduced it to 80,000 yuan. Wang Qiong only had more than 10,000 yuan in his mobile phone. He scraped together 20,000 yuan and wrote Wu Xuanhuan an IOU for 60,000 yuan. Wang Qiong got more and more angry when he returned home, and Wu Xuanhuan set a trick for him. Not only did he not delete the video, he also threatened that Wang Qiong would pay off the money on the IOU within a month, otherwise he would ruin Wang Qiong's reputation. Wang Qiong suppressed his anger and had to borrow money from everyone. When he borrowed money from a colleague, the other party not only refused to lend us money, but also spoke in a sarcastic tone, saying, "Your wife is so rich, but she still borrows money from us. My wife is just a housewife, where does she get the money?" Wang Qiong was a little angry. Not only did the other party refuse to lend us money, but he also spread rumors. Who knew that the other party would not give up, asking, "How come there is no money?" I saw him go to the Prada counter yesterday. Prada. Wang Qiong usually drives a sports car outside. He is not like other young people, who are exposed to new things. He doesn't know what Prada is, but he vaguely guessed that his wife was hiding something from him, so he immediately asked for leave to go home to see what was going on. Chen Lan was not at home. Wang Qiong did find a bag starting with P in a hidden corner of the closet. He curiously searched it with his mobile phone and found all kinds of prices. The cheapest one cost thousands. How could he afford to buy such an expensive bag? Where did he get the money? Wang Qiong's heart was full of questions, and he began to follow Chen Lan with these questions. At first, he was no different from usual, until she followed him into an alley and walked into a small hotel hand in hand with Wu Xuanhuan, who had been waiting at the other end. Wang Qiong was so angry that his head was about to explode. Wang Qiong immediately thought of the tens of thousands of dollars he had been blackmailed by Wu Xuanhuan. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He was sure that this was a trap set by the adulterer and the adulteress. Especially Chen Lan was so hypocritical that she even cried and begged him on her knees, saying that she would definitely learn well. If it weren't for the sake of the child, he would have kicked her out long ago. He was now cuckolding him, and he was used to this stinky bitch. He didn't immediately teach them a lesson, nor did he retaliate in the way Wu Xuanhuan did. He watched the two of them embrace each other, and walked into the hotel with a vicious look in his eyes, and a vicious plan was born in his mind. That day, Chen Lan packed up everything at home as usual, changed into underwear, and prepared to meet Wu Xuanhuan. He felt that there seemed to be some strange smell on his underwear, but he didn't think much about it, and Wu Xuanhuan called. So he hurriedly changed into his own clothes, and went to the old place to have a tryst with Wu Xuanhuan. The two arrived at the hotel, and after making love, Chen Lan felt something was wrong. Her lower body was in pain, and it was excruciating. Not only that, she also had an ulcer and bleeding. Chen Lan complained to Wu Xuanhuan why he was using so much strength. Wu Xuanhuan also felt a burning pain in his lower body, and a large area of ulcers appeared. He began to panic, so he asked Chen Lan if she had taken any medicine or applied any irritating ointment. Chen Lan shook his head, he didn't know. He suddenly thought of the underwear he changed today. Could it be that there was something wrong with the underwear? He quickly took his underwear and smelled it closely. There was a faint smell of pesticides on it, which was very pungent. Wu Xuanhuan snatched it and also smelled the smell of pesticides on it. The two thought of a possibility at the same time, called 120 and sent them to the hospital for emergency treatment, but they still couldn't be rescued. Wang Qiong applied highly toxic paraquat on Chen Lan's underwear, and he was afraid that Chen Lan would find the underwear soaked in paraquat water. He was afraid that he would fail, so he handled every one. In the end, Chen Lan and Wu Xuanhuan died in the hospital due to multiple organ failure caused by close contact with paraquat. This case of poisoning was widely spread among the people. The police immediately found Wang Qiong. After some interrogation, Wang Qiong confessed without any effort. When the interrogator asked him why he poisoned, he said that he was angry and just wanted to teach the two a lesson, not to let them die. But he didn't regret it at all, but felt sorry for the child, who would have to live with his elderly parents in the future. Zhao Mengdan also knew that Wu Xuanhuan's death was caused by Wang Qiong's poisoning, but he didn't feel bad at all. On the contrary, Wu Xuanhuan's death gave him relief. He finally didn't have to get up early and work late like before, risking his life to make money, and finally squandered it all. As for the child in his belly, he didn't go to abort it. He wanted to find a place to hide his identity and give birth to the child in his belly and raise it alone. Wang Qiong was prosecuted. According to relevant laws, he committed intentional homicide and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. After the verdict came into effect, he did not appeal. But his colleagues who ran taxes together felt sorry for Wang Qiong. A good family was broken up like this. Wang Qiong was taken to the police car, which slowly drove him away and disappeared from people's sight. A bizarre murder case by poisoning came to an end. Well, today's story ends here. Thank you for listening. If you have anything to say to us, please leave a message below the video to tell us.